Merci beaucoup tout le monde d'être ici aujourd'hui. Bonjour. Merci au Fire of God, une banque alimentaire locale qui fait un travail exceptionnel avec beaucoup plus de demandes que jamais dans leur histoire. Nous étions un pays où tout le monde qui travaillait fort, presque tout le monde qui travaillait fort, était capable d'avoir des bons repas nutritifs, délicieux, d'avoir le bœuf et les patates sur la table presque chaque nuit il y a 10 ans. Même les gens qui étaient dans une période difficile étaient capables d'acheter de nourriture. Je me souviens quand j'étais très jeune, même pendant les périodes difficiles, les années 80, où mes parents avaient des problèmes financiers, on avait toujours des bons repas. On n'avait jamais besoin d'avoir faim. Je me souviens pas une seule nuit où j'ai pas au moins eu un souper nutritif et délicieux, même si c'était un peu trop de brocoli ou d'autres choses, au moins je pouvais manger à ma faim quand j'étais jeune. Et c'était comme une partie de la promesse du Canada que toutes les familles, peu importe leurs origines, pouvaient manger bien. Mais depuis 10 ans de l'inflation libérale, on voit que cette promesse est brisée. Ici, à Fire of God, le banque alimentaire que nous visitons, on voit une demande massive. Par exemple, je vous donne juste cette année, ici, à cette banque alimentaire, ils ont déjà aidé 70 000 personnes. L'année dernière, c'était 64 000 pour toute l'année. Donc, de la moitié de l'année, ils ont nourri plus de personnes que pendant toute l'année de 2024. Et aujourd'hui, la majorité de leurs clients viennent des classes ouvrières et moyennes, des gens avec des emplois. Monsieur Osorio m'a dit qu'ils ouvrent leurs portes les dimanches à midi pour donner la nourriture. Mais les gens arrivent à 7 heures le matin. Donc, il y a une file d'attente pendant 5 heures pour avoir quelque chose à manger. Les prix de nourriture augmentent à cause des taxes libérales. Les libéraux de Carney ont augmenté le prix de l'épicerie en instaurant 4 taxes cachées sur les épiceries et les produits alimentaires. Premièrement, il y a la taxe industrielle de carbone qui s'applique aux engrais et au matériel agricole. Il y a aussi la nouvelle taxe carbone sur le diesel et l'essence. Il y a la taxe sur les emballages alimentaires en plastique. Il y a la taxe inflationniste causée par l'augmentation des déficits et l'impression de monnaie de M. Carney. On sait que quand les déficits sont grands, le gouvernement imprime de l'argent et ça gonfle l'inflation. Encore, l'inflation est en hausse. L'inflation fondamentale est à 3 % et ça s'accélère. On sait que l'inflation alimentaire est presque 2 fois plus élevée que le cible de la Banque du Canada. Et on pensait que M. Carney, qui a une image un peu plus responsable que Justin Trudeau, allait dépenser moins. Encore, il dépense plus. Il a annoncé plus de 100 milliards de dollars de nouveaux mesures de dépenses depuis son arrivée au pouvoir. Les dettes que les libéraux ont doublées déjà causent une inflation hors de contrôle et menacent nos programmes sociaux. Selon le directeur parlementaire du budget, qui a qualifié des dépenses déficitaires de Mark Carney comme étant très alarmants, stupéfiants, choquants, insoutenables. Si vous ne changez pas, c'est fini. Et je cite, « Quelque chose va briser, selon le directeur parlementaire du budget. Le Canada n'a pas franchi le précipice, il a dit, mais on regarde par-dessus la falaise. » Oui, c'est les commentaires, le témoignage d'un économiste. On pense toujours que c'est juste des chiffres, mais c'est des êtres humains, des personnes qui m'ont écrit, comme Joanne de Vaughan, 59 ans. Elle a postulé à 1200 emplois sans aucun job pendant 17 mois. Son fils, 37 ans, est sans emploi et il a dû revenir chez elle. 37 ans, il doit revenir chez sa mère. Elle a 2 mois, il est déjà 2 mois en retard pour son loyer. Elle doit manger tous ses repas des banques alimentaires. Taylor, le loyer de Taylor a doublé pendant les années libérales. Malgré une blessure, elle doit travailler 6 jours par semaine. Elle ne peut pas se payer ses factures. En fait, le loyer consomme 100% de son salaire. Donc, elle voit que ses parents ont pu acheter leur maison pour 200 000 $ en 2010. 200 000 $ Et maintenant, ça coûte 1,5 million de dollars après les années inflationnistes des libéraux. On voit Charity, dans le nord de l'Ontario, mère célibataire, âgée de 41 ans, avec 3 enfants. Elle fréquente les banques alimentaires 1 fois par semaine. Elle vit avec ses parents et ses grands-parents car le loyer est trop élevé, même dans le nord de l'Ontario, là où c'était très abordable il y a 10 ans. Son fils de 19 ans a postulé de nombreux emplois, mais ne reçoit aucune réponse lorsque les emplois sont donnés par Mark Carney et les libéraux aux travailleurs étrangers temporaires. Ça, c'est des lettres que j'ai reçues personnellement à mon bureau. Mark Carney a dit aux Canadiens qu'ils pouvaient le juger, et je cite, en fonction de leur expérience à l'épicerie. C'était sa promesse à lui. Depuis cette promesse, les prix à l'épicerie ont augmenté et aujourd'hui, ils augmentent encore plus vite qu'au moment où M. Carney est arrivé dans sa fonction. Depuis l'arrivée au pouvoir de Mark Carney, le bœuf a augmenté en prix de 33 %, le soupe en conserve à 26 %, les raisins ont augmenté de 24 %, les cafés torréfiés et moulus ont augmenté de 22 %, un morceau de bœuf à mijoter a augmenté de 22 %. Ça, c'est l'inflation alimentaire de Mark Carney. Et ne blâmons pas les effets mondiaux, parce que les prix de nourriture augmentent 48 % plus rapidement ici au Canada qu'aux États-Unis. Heureusement, les tarifs des Américains ne s'appliquent pas aux nourritures consommées ici au Canada, donc on ne peut pas blâmer les autres pays pour l'inflation alimentaire causée par les libéraux ici au Canada. En août, l'inflation alimentaire était presque le double le cible de la Banque du Canada. À Toronto, il va y avoir 4 millions de visites cette année. 4 millions, c'est le double qu'il y a 2 ans. Encore, c'est beaucoup pire sous M. Carney que ça n'a été sous M. Justin Trudeau. Donc, la crise de coût de l'épicerie libérale devient de pire en pire et les Canadiens souffrent. En fait, c'est dangereux, cette crise-là. C'est pour ça que les conservateurs demandent un message, très clair. Les conservateurs revendiquent d'arrêter de taxer l'épicerie. Les 4 taxes que les libéraux s'appliquent aux épiceries doivent être éliminées. Encore, on sait que chaque dollar que dépense M. Carney vient des poches des Canadiens. C'est une forme de taxe directe ou des taxes inflationnistes indirectes. C'est pour ça que les conservateurs demandent d'éliminer la taxe, tous les taxes de l'épicerie que les libéraux ont imposées. Éliminons la taxe industrielle de carbone sur les fermiers. Éliminons la nouvelle taxe sur le diesel et le gaz et l'essence qui augmente le coût de production et transport de nourriture. Éliminons la taxe d'emballage de nourriture libérale et éliminons la taxe inflationniste de M. Carney. Avec des taxes plus bas, on peut avoir la nourriture plus abordable pour que chaque famille puisse manger à leur faim. Les Canadiens méritent de nourriture nutritive et délicieuse. Ils devraient pouvoir acheter une belle maison dans une communauté sécuritaire. C'est ça la promesse du Canada que nous voulons réinstaurer. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. I want to thank the Fire of God Ministries for their food bank work. They have already fed 70,000 visitors, 70,000 visits as of July. Last year, it was 64,000 visits for the entire year. So they've already passed last year's demand and still half the year remains to go. It's a big change. As you can see, anybody who walks down Murray Street can see an incredible change. Those of you who live in Ottawa, you'll remember that 10 years ago, you didn't see a block and a half of homeless people dying of drug addictions living on the streets, but it is just another image of life falling apart after a decade of liberal inflation, liberal housing crisis, liberal drug policies, and liberal chaos. Policies that some people thought might reverse under Mark Carney, but in fact have worsened under his leadership. It is more drugs, more costs, more crises, more of the same under Mark Carney's Liberals. And nowhere is this more true than when it comes to food prices, which are in a total and absolute crisis. Prices are rising faster today than they were when Mark Carney took office, promising to lower them. And why is this? Well, because the Liberals have 4 sneaky grocery taxes that are embedded in everything you buy. First, the industrial carbon tax on fertilizer and farm equipment drives up the cost for our producers. Second, they're gradually raising a sneaky new carbon tax on gas and diesel, which will rise to 17 cents a litre, the same level of the previous Liberal carbon tax. Then there's the food packaging tax, which they are putting in place that will raise the cost of food and groceries by $400 per year per family. And then, of course, there's the worst tax of all, and that is the inflation tax. And that happens when governments run enormous deficits that they pay for by printing money, and that bids up the cost of everything. You'll recall that when I said that back in 2021 and 2022, some misinformed commentators denied that it was money printing. Of course, it was money printing, and it was literally money printing. They literally printed money, increased the number of printed paper bills. So it was like, it's not just a figurative statement. So some misinformed commentators got that wrong, and Canadians paid the price. One of those commentators, of course, was Mark Carney himself, who said that money printing would be necessary. He advised Justin Trudeau to do it. Obviously, we had the inflation crisis. We know that he caused a disastrous inflation crisis in the United Kingdom, where he is reviled by consumers who can no longer afford their quality of life after his disastrous stint as the governor of that bank. And now he's bringing the same disastrous policies here. Don't take my word for it. Recently, Mr. Carney appointed a parliamentary budget officer, and that budget officer is commenting on Carney's spending and his deficits and said they are, quote, very alarming, stupefying, shocking, unsustainable. If you don't change, this is done. Something is going to break. While Canada hasn't gone over the precipice, he says, and I'm quoting, it's looking over the cliff. After 10 years of Liberals and after 6 months of Mark Carney worsening the problem. Under his leadership, he has added another $100 billion of spending measures above and beyond what was there under Justin Trudeau. In other words, the deficit is now 2/3 higher than the one that Trudeau left behind for this year. He has added well over $100 billion of deficits for the forthcoming 5 years. In fact, the 5-year horizon for deficits has now doubled under Carney versus what it was under Trudeau. So a more conservative-looking haircut, suit, and resume has not resulted in more conservative spending. It was all an illusion. In fact, Mr. Carney costs more than Mr. Trudeau. And who's paying the price? Because every dollar the Carney Liberals spend comes out of the pockets of real people, like Joanne, who wrote my office, 59 years old. She's applied for 1,200 jobs over the past 17 months. Her 37-year-old son is out of work and had to move back home. Rent is 2 months behind. She's facing homelessness. Her credit card is maxed out. She eats all of her meals from a food bank. Taylor, her rent has doubled under the Liberals, and now her rent alone costs her whole paycheck. It's gone, just with rent. Nothing left for food, so she skips lunch. She's injured, but she works 6 days a week. She can't afford it to lose any income, but she can't afford a home, can't afford to save any money. Her parents bought their house for $200,000 in 2010. Can you imagine that? You can't buy a parking space for $200,000 under the Liberals. Now that house will go for $1.5 million. In other words, the daughter cannot afford to even dream of owning the house that the parents owned under the Conservative government. Charity from Northern Ontario, where housing and the cost of living used to be cheap. Now this 41-year-old single mother with 3 boys uses the food bank every week, lives with her parents and grandparents because rent is too high, no retirement savings, doesn't know what she's going to do when she eventually does get too old to work. Her oldest son has applied for many jobs, but none get back to her, as Mark Carney allows multinational corporations to give her son's jobs away to low-wage temporary foreign workers. And he says that the corporate lobbyists don't want him to reverse that policy. But sadly, our young people can't work. Canadian jobs should go to Canadian workers. Crystal, a 45-year-old single mother of 3, has been coming here to Fire of God Food Bank since 2019, finds grocery prices increasingly unaffordable, and she's desperate. She has no idea what she's going to do. You know, when on Sundays they open here, what is it, at noon or 11? 12:30, and the people arrive. What time do they start lining? 7 a.m. they start lining up here for 12:30 food. And then on the weekday?
We open at 4:30.
And?
11 a.m.
11 a.m. people line up for a 4:30 visit to the food bank. That is the hell that Mark Carney and the Liberals have brought to our streets. Mark Carney, and he will say, don't blame me. He was busy traveling the world when all this happened. Well, I'm not going to hold Mark Carney to my standard. I'm going to hold him to his own. He promised in the election he'd bring more affordable food. He said that Canadians should judge him by their experience at the grocery store. That's a quote. Since that time, beef is up 33%, soup 26%, grapes 24%, coffee 22%, beef stewing cuts 22%, and it's not a global issue. It's not a foreign issue. It's a Mark Carney Liberal issue. Food prices are rising 48% faster in Canada than they are in the United States of America, and you can't blame tariffs because American tariffs do not apply on food consumed here in Canada. So no more excuses, no more distractions. It's time for Mark Carney to take responsibility for the food price hell that he is causing in this country. In fact, food price inflation is twice the Bank of Canada's target. 1 in 10 Torontonians is eating at a food bank. Greater Montreal has 500,000 visits to food banks every single month. Food Banks Canada reports that 25% of Canadians are living in food insecurity after a decade of Liberals. Worsening under Carney. It used to be a year ago, folks were spending $16,000 on food every year. That's up $800 to almost $17,000 under Mark Carney's inflationary policies. 100,000 more people lost their jobs over the summer as Carney's taxes and red tape blocked employment. And then what few jobs do exist, he is giving his corporate insider friends the license to give them to temporary foreign workers at lower wages. But Canadians deserve better than this, and Canadians will have better than this. I'm here today offering a message of hope. You do not have to live like this. You should be able to walk peacefully down grocery aisles looking at the delicious meals that you're going to put together at home and enjoying that food, knowing that both your stomach and your bank account are full. That is the country we had, and that's the country we're going to restore. And today, Conservatives have a positive proposal. We're working with all parties on this proposal. It's a very simple idea. Stop taxing groceries. Let's end the industrial carbon tax on farm equipment and fertilizer so they can produce our food more affordably. Get rid of the new Liberal carbon tax on diesel and gasoline. Let's get rid of the food packaging tax. Allow our grocery stores to use the most effective way of preserving food, which of course is plastic. Plastic, which is a fully recyclable, made in Canada substance that preserves food better than any other technology, should be allowed to be there so that we can have fresh food that lasts longer and people can enjoy for 3 or 4 more days before it spoils. And of course, get rid of the inflation tax. We're calling for Mark Carney to reverse his new spending increases cap spending, cut bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid. We can't give money abroad when we're not feeding our own people at home. Charity starts at home. Cut foreign aid. Put the money into our country. Instead, let's cut back on the handouts to phony asylum claimants. Stop paying for hotels for fake refugees. Get rid of the corporate welfare handouts to Mark Carney's insiders and friends. Let's bring down the deficit so that we don't have to print money anymore. Get rid of the inflation tax so that people's purchasing power lasts longer. These are positive proposals that will restore the promise of Canada, that hard work is rewarded. Food and homes are affordable. Streets are safe. Our borders solid. And our country united under a proud flag. This should once again be a country with strong paychecks that buy affordable food and homes. A country for all Canadians, and that's what we will work for as Conservatives. Thank you.
We will now open the floor to questions. Please identify yourself and your outlet.
Good morning, Mr. Poilievre. Kate McKenna with CBC News. I'm wondering if you could reflect on the terrorist designation for the Bishnoi gang. This is something you've been calling for, but does it go far enough? Will it affect Canada's trade relationship with India? What do you think?
Thank you. Very important question. A long overdue decision. Conservatives have long been calling for the Bishnoi gang to be banned. This gang has been responsible for much of the extortion that has terrorized Surrey, Brampton, Northeast Calgary. Canadians have seen under this Liberal government a 330% increase in extortions. Part of this is due to foreign criminals that Liberals have let into Canada and allowed to terrorize our streets. The Public Safety Minister has lost track of 600 foreign criminals, and he keeps his job under Mark Carney. It's time for Mark Carney to explain why he allows Liberal C5 to remain in place. This is a law that reduced criminal penalties and jail time for extortion with a gun. Why, Mr. Carney, do you keep in place the Liberal law that lets gun-toting extortionists off with house arrest? Mr. Carney, you are endangering our people with these radical Liberal laws. Repeal the Liberal crime laws, bring in mandatory prison sentences to lock up extortionists. Let us deport from our country every single foreign criminal, track them down, kick them out, and let's bring peace and security to the wonderful business owners in Surrey, Brampton, Northeast Calgary, who deserve to live in tranquility as they build their lives and their businesses. Thank you.
Hello, so Paul Dutch, Global News.
Yes.
The federal government has given Algoma Steel a $400 million loan in light of the ongoing U.S. tariffs. Do you support this move, and is that enough?
Canadian steel workers deserve job security, and Canadians need a strong steel sector. Steel is literally the bones of an industrial economy and of our national security. We can't lose steel jobs. Unfortunately, Mark Carney has failed. He broke his promise to, quote, negotiate a win with President Trump. Instead, since Carney took office, he has allowed the Americans to double tariffs on Canada. Now, it was him that promised that he would have elbows up and stop the steel tariffs, but he's broken that promise. Another Liberal bait and switch. There's one tariff that Mark Carney could get rid of on Canadian steel today, and that is the industrial carbon tax. The Liberal industrial carbon tax will shut down our entire steel sector. There's, I think it was Stelco that said this tax will cost them $500 million by 2030. If the Carney Liberals go ahead with this tax, they will destroy our steel sector. We've seen a decade of deindustrialization under Liberal taxes and red tape. It cannot go on. So my message to Mark Carney is, put aside your net zero ideology and your Liberal policies and do what's right for Canadians. Join with Conservatives to end the industrial carbon tax and bring steel jobs back to our country. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Premièrement, Les Canadiens qui travaillent dans l'acier méritent des emplois. On a besoin de l'acier pour une économie industrielle et militaire. C'est essentiel à notre sécurité nationale. M. Carney a promis de négocier une victoire avec Donald Trump. Il a dit qu'il allait le faire le 21 juillet. Depuis ce temps-là, il a échoué et il a brisé sa promesse. En plus, les libéraux ont mis en place une taxe carbone industrielle sur l'industrie de l'aluminium et de l'acier, ce qui va détruire l'industrie. Je réclame à M. Carney d'éliminer la taxe libérale de carbone industriel qui s'applique à notre secteur de l'acier pour ramener les emplois ici au Canada. Nous devrions être un pays avec l'acier qui est produit par nos travailleurs parce que c'est essentiel à notre sécurité nationale. Merci beaucoup.
Good morning, Pierre. Willie Temtem with True North.
Sorry, with who?
True North.
True North.
This past week, we saw a church burning in Canada, a tragic incident at a church in Michigan, and over 100 incidents of church burning or vandalism since 2021 in Canada.
Yes.
What do you make of the sectarian strife seen targeting towards Christians? Do you think the government's doing enough to combat this, and what would you do?
I think it's terrible. No, the government is not doing enough, and I would do a lot more. So let's recap where we are. 100 churches have been burned. You hear almost nothing from the Liberal government about this. Christians may be the number one group that is victims of hate-based violence. But of course, it's not politically correct to say that. 100 terrorist attacks against Canadian churches. This anti-Christian hate has got to stop. We've seen with this Liberal government is the number of things they've done to allow this. One, they've separated people into groups. Their ideology seeks to identity politics divides one group against another, and then we're surprised when that leads to violence. Two, the Liberals have reduced criminal penalties for arson, so people are not afraid to get caught burning things down anymore. And three, they have failed to put law enforcement resources where they belong, which is to say going after criminals rather than targeting farmers, duck hunters, and professional sport shooters. So Conservatives would take exactly the opposite approach. We would bring in mandatory prison sentences for extortionists. We would crack down on hate crime, which is more than doubled under the Liberals, with tougher laws that throw criminals in prison. We used to make sure that the foreign criminals that are in our country illegally are kicked out of Canada. And we would redirect resources away from banning duck hunters, farmers, and sport shooters towards more police and border services that will keep all Canadians safe. Because frankly, Canadians of all faiths, including Christians, deserve to worship in peace. Thank you.
Good morning, it's Campbell
Morning.
Clark from the Globe and Mail. I'd like to ask you about inflation and food inflation.
Yes.
Inflation's running at 1.9% as of August, food inflation at 3.4%.
Right.
You also ran on a platform with substantial deficits. So could you tell me what you think the rate of inflation would be if you were elected with those substantial deficits? And also, you were saying last year that the biggest cause of food inflation was the fuel charge, the consumer carbon tax. That's gone now. So has that lowered food inflation?
Okay, well, two parts. First of all, I ran on cutting the deficit, and we had costed reductions. We had very specific reductions in the size of the federal bureaucracy. We proposed to cut the consultants by $10 billion and to cut foreign aid in half. I could go on. So we proposed to cut the Liberal deficit. It would bring it down. When you bring deficits down, you bring inflation down. Inflation is caused by one thing, and only one thing, and that's government. Government spending and government taxes drive up the cost of food. Food prices should be plummeting, to be frank, because farmers produce far more food on far less land, with far less fertilizer, far less labor, far less water than ever before. So it would be based on the market, food prices should be dropping dramatically every single year. Why are they going up? Because government, you don't believe me you don't believe me when I say that?
I don't believe that's an explanation for food prices. There's demand and
No, you're right. And what increases the cost? The taxes. So they didn't get rid of the carbon tax. I said I would get rid of the entire carbon tax for everyone, for everything for real. The Liberals have an industrial carbon tax, which the food professor says applies on the food chain. It taxes farm equipment and fertilizer, so to tax food. They've got the fuel standard tax, which is gradually rising up to the same level as the fuel charge. Then they've got the food packaging tax, which is a plastic tax that is going to increase the cost of food because plastic is the best way to preserve food. And then, of course, there's the inflation tax. When you print money, you get inflation. And you know, with respect, I know when I said this back in 2021, you all told me it was wrong, and of course, it was the right thing. Maybe my friend here, you didn't say that. I wasn't accusing you of that. But everyone said it was wrong, but it is a scientific economic fact. When you print money, you get inflation. Just like Mark Carney caused the worst inflation of all of the neighboring countries in the UK when he was the Bank of England governor, just like when he advised Justin Trudeau to print money in Canada, we got terrible food inflation. So you need to cut the deficit, eliminate all the food taxes, and then allow our farmers to bring nutritious, delicious, affordable food to your plate and mine, and everybody's. I think when the Liberals take their hand out of one of your pockets and then put their hands in three of your other pockets, you're going to end up paying more.
Thank you. Next question.
Good morning, Rachel Ayello, CTV News. Just to go back to the Algoma Steel announcement, the federal government is framing this as a reason why the upcoming deficit is going to be so large, because they say they are using this money to support Canadian industries. Can you just clarify, do you support this example of spending? And if not, what would you do differently to support those jobs?
Thank you. So we have to look at the details because there's the press release and then there's the reality. And for example, you know, Liberals created a $70 billion housing bureaucracy they said would make homes affordable. And what did it do? It doubled housing costs. So if you had asked 10 years ago how wonderful this new program would be, then maybe people would have agreed, but the result was actually to increase housing costs. We need to look at what they've actually proposed and what they're actually doing. As for this business of investing, okay, this is nothing new. I encourage you all to go look back at the video reel of the Liberal ministers and of Justin Trudeau's 2015 election campaign. He claimed that if he ran deficits, it would be an investment that would grow the economy. And what happened over those 10 Liberal years? The per capita GDP in Canada was the worst of any G7 country. Then, after COVID was over, they began spending on deficit dollars on things unrelated to COVID, and they said it was an investment. What happened? Our GDP per capita grew at the lowest rate in the G7, and we had the worst inflation in 40 years. So now, Mark Carney is repeating the same Liberal talking points of the last 10 years, claiming that when he borrows and spends, it is an investment. He will get exactly the same results that the Liberals have gotten over the decade that has gone behind it. It is the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Frankly, the only difference between Mark Carney's deficit spending and Justin Trudeau's is that Carney's is much higher and much more irresponsible, and it will have even more destructive effects. Deficit spending weighs down the economy, crowds out investment, drives up the cost of living, and makes us poorer. What we need is to unlock, you asked my approach, we need to unlock the free enterprise system where businesses have low taxes, fast permits, access to markets so that they can build. We should have the fastest building permits anywhere in the world so that money-making projects that create wealth for our people can be unleashed. So I propose we pass the Canadian Sovereignty Act, which will make this the best place in the world to open a steel mill, dig a mine, build a pipeline, export our resources, expand a port. That is how we will unlock real private sector investment that generates revenue for the government rather than generating costs for taxpayers and consumers. Thank you.
Une dernière question?
Oui.
Bonjour, M. Poilievre. Christian Noël de
Bonjour, Christian.
Radio-Canada.
Merci.
La grande majorité des pays dans le monde reconnaissent maintenant l'État palestinien tout en rejetant le Hamas, y compris le Canada. Sous un gouvernement Poilievre, est-ce que vous conserveriez cette reconnaissance de l'État ou est-ce que vous l'annuleriez et pourquoi?
Nous croyons que M. Carney a reconnu l'État Hamas qui va donner qui va récompenser le terrorisme. Il donne une grande victoire aux terroristes avec sa décision. Moi, ma priorité, c'est de contrer le terrorisme. Et il y a des conditions que M. Carney a établies avant la reconnaissance d'un État. Ces conditions ne sont pas éteintes. Moi, je crois que la Hamas n'est pas un État et que l'État d'Israël devrait être reconnu, sécuritaire, et on devrait y avoir une négociation entre les Israéliens et des groupes de Palestiniens qui sont paisibles, qui ne sont pas liés à la Hamas et qui sont reconnus comme étant un groupe non lié aux attaques du 7 octobre. Il faut commencer en donnant tous les otages à Israël, d'éliminer les armements d'Hamas et de donner tous les terroristes pour les mettre en prison. Et comme ça qu'on peut commencer les négociations pour un État éventuel.
Mais l'État est déjà reconnu. Est-ce que vous annuleriez cette reconnaissance?
Moi, je ne reconnais pas l'État Hamas que M. Carney a favorisé. Merci. All right.
I think that concludes today's press conference.
All right. Thank you. Oh, well, we'll let her have it. All right. Sure.
Thank you so much. Sarah Ritchie with the Canadian Press.
Thank
you
you,
wrote
Sarah.
a letter recently to the Justice Minister about the BC Supreme Court decision in
Yes.
the Cowichan case. What exactly do you think that the court got wrong that the government ought to argue?
Well, the court got property rights wrong. The court found in its ruling that the fee simple property rights that have existed for hundreds of years and are the foundation of our very economy should be overturned. That would devastate our entire economy. It is already causing investment to flee our country. People are not going to build factories, open up jobs, start businesses, or even buy homes if they think that their land could be confiscated and given to someone else. So we oppose this ruling, and we call on the federal government to make legal arguments at the appeal level to overturn it. We hope that the case is heard quickly so that we can put this matter to rest. We, as Conservatives, stand for property rights. We want all of the property owners in British Columbia and across Canada to know that we will protect your home. Your home belongs to you, and we will fight against any legal attempts to take it away from you. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Do you want to say a brief greeting to everyone? Sure. Okay. Just to tell them what you do here.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and thank you to Mr. Poilievre for being here and your lovely wife. We are honored to have you here at Fire of
great
God.
to be here.
It's a true honor. You know, the reality is true. Every Canadian deserves not to worry about how they're going to feed their families. And here at Fire of God, we are committed to providing fresh groceries for absolutely anyone and everybody that walks through these doors. And we know that behind a good plan, behind Mr. Poilievre, we know that Canada will be in a better place. And I want to say again, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for all you're doing, Mr. Osorio. Many blessings to you.
sir.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Thank you.